lies on FPL Game Week 10 with Crystal Palace, Arsenal and Manchester United players the targets, and maybe a few others too in this week's episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. This video is split into two parts, the first of which we will look at those players you may already have in your team and which ones you should keep and which ones you should sell. After that, we'll be looking at the players you don't have, which players you should buy, and which players you should be avoiding. Players will be tier listed with the best players at the top and the worst ones at the bottom. Starting off with the forwards, as we always do, those players you may already have in your team, and some people are sick of Voltemada already. We are seeing some transfers out for him, but ahead of this West Ham game, that sounds like absolute crazy talk. By the way, Voltemada owners, if you didn't watch the Newcastle game in Game Week 9, he was very close to scoring, hitting the woodwork. So some poor fortune there, I suppose, but his data is great. The next fixture is amazing. There's some few good other fixtures coming up for Newcastle. I think, Newcastle have some okay fixtures generally, and I think their starting striker is always going to have a chance of getting some goals in each given game week. Mark Gu is being sold here. I'm not sure what people expected from him. He's a 4.2 million forward, and actually I really like the idea of taking some money out of the forward line and mostly keeping Mark Gu on the bench. That said, there's a chance he could start in the next couple of game weeks. We'll have to keep an eye on that. So he is potentially a startable player for now, but in terms of structure, I think he works really well for your team. I'd also keep Ekitike. I think I'd give him this Aston Villa game and maybe think about moving him on, depending on the situation with Isak. But out of all of the forwards that we see at the moment, I don't know if Ekitike is one I'd be rushing out necessarily. Gyökeres is a monitor, and the real reason for that is the fixture. Burnley away, this is the team that is the worst defence in the Premier League if we look at those underlying numbers. They concede so many high quality chances, and Gyökeres has been struggling a little bit for chances recently, but if we're looking at this fixture, we're thinking Arsenal, could they score a few goals in this game? Is this going to be a bit different from the usual 1-0s? Is this going to be the 4-0, the 5-0? We have seen them before this season already. We saw it against Leeds United, for example, earlier on in the season, where the difference in quality between Arsenal and their opposition was plain to see. I think we could see that again this week, so I'd be very careful before selling Gyökeres, because I think this Burnley game is such a fabulous fixture for an attacker, and it may be something that you regret. Of course, some people will be looking to make the double switch, moving Gyökeres to Saka. I completely understand it if that is the case. Maybe after that, maybe Gyökeres is going to be a player easier to sell. I think Sunderland is not such a great fixture anymore. We've got Spurs and Chelsea after that as well. But for this game week, Burnley, I think the attackers actually could be pretty useful for this game week. We've got Bowen here next, one to monitor. Just West Ham so poor, and yes, they have Burnley in game week 11, but the fixtures around that are so tough. So I think you really have a choice if you own Bowen. You either keep him for the next 2 game weeks or you just sell him now. So one or the other. You're not going to sell him in game week 11, so you kind of need to make your bed if you do have Bowen in your team. João Pedro, I don't think it's an absolute must sell, because we do have Wolves at home and Burnley in 11 and 12, and these are amazing fixtures. But with Chelsea, you want to make sure you have the right attackers, the right forward players, whether that's forwards or midfielders, that are actually going to be taking the shots and getting the goals, maybe getting the assists too. And right now, João Pedro is just not that guy. He is hardly involved, even playing in a preferred, slightly deeper position behind the striker. Still didn't really work out for him in Game Week 9. We're running out of excuses for João Pedro. He has been a possible sell for quite some time now, and this week, he is edging closer to that sell category. But if you have a replacement in mind, he is definitely a player that you could sacrifice, but it's not like you have to sell him if you don't want to. Watkins, similar situation, Liverpool away, maybe a time to sell him. He has just not been very good in terms of that underlying data recently. It's not as bad as João Pedro, but it is still pretty weak. We want to be seeing forwards, surely, with over 1 XG in a 6 game weeks combined, hopefully more than 2 XG, and really only Gyökeres and Voltemada are the only 2 players on this list who have been able to do that, and that's why we are looking at selling so many of these forwards. Maybe a little harsh on Ekitike because he has been in and out the first 11, but if Isak's out, then Ekitike can maybe do some business in the near future. In terms of those sells, Chris Wood, with that potential injury there, we're not sure if he's going to be back for Game Week 10 or not. But do we have high hopes for Forest right now? probably not. Things not going too well over there. Isak, with his injury issues and his price tag, there is very little reason to keep him at this point. I think you're probably going to sell him. And Richarlison continues to be rotation risk. Didn't start again in game week 9 as Thomas Frank looks at his different options in the forward positions. Is it going to be Kolo Muani? Is it going to be Tell? We don't really know. So, Richarlison, you don't want to play that game. The fixtures in the next 3 aren't exactly amazing anyway. Although, saying that, Chelsea at home, Man United at home, if Richarlison was guaranteed to start, I would be tempted to keep him for the next 2. That is not the case, though. Looking at midfielders, Enzo, you've got to keep him. You've got to keep him. I know there's probably some disappointment in game week 9, people hoping for some instant returns there. But, you know, he took a few shots. He made a few key passes in that game. It's kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for the Chelsea players that do take shots, that do create. And Enzo seems to be more that guy than Joao Pedro is right now. And again, looking at 11 and 12, these are good fixtures, Wolves and Burnley. And even the Spurs fixture, it's not a bad fixture. It's kind of probably a middle of the table fixture. What is interesting about this Spurs versus Chelsea game, though, is that this is a game that often has high scores, big results, and that could favour attackers in a fixture like this. It's just a case of identifying who those attackers might be. Probably not going to be Joao Pedro, but, you know, Enzo, if he's on penalties as well, on some set pieces, there is going to be routes to points for Enzo, and I think he's got to be a keep. Gakpo is probably the one beacon of light in that Liverpool team at the moment when we're looking at underlying attacking data. He's not quite as good as Salah, to be fair, but for 7.6 million, you're paying a lot less money. So I think Gakpo's possibly worth keeping. We do have some nice fixtures after game week 11. Nottingham Forest in 12, West Ham in 13. That's pretty nice there. And Bruno Fernandes, I think he's got some decent fixtures in general. Maybe not amazing fixtures, maybe not perfect fixtures, but Nottingham Forest is not a bad one. I think Bruno is one of those players. He's got good underlying data. He's going to regularly pick up defensive contribution points. And in most weeks, he'll probably outscore your average midfielder. The question always is with Bruno is whether he's value for money, and really the only reason to sell him is if you do need that money to move him to do something else with it, whether you want to upgrade defense, forwards, whatever. But as long as you don't need the money, Bruno, I think you just keep him. Some people thinking about making a sideways switch to Bruno and to like Mbermo, for example. I'm not really totally convinced by that. You got your set piece taker, penalty taker, DEFCON merchant, you know, with good fixtures. Maybe unlucky not to get anything in the Game Week 9 fixture against Brighton. There were some opportunities for him to get attacking returns. Didn't quite happen. And he's a bonus point machine as well. He's doing so well for bonus points. He needs just 1 assist to get all of the bonus points. That is what's crazy about him, because he is so involved in everything that Manchester United do. So I still think there should be a degree of faith in Bruno Fernandes, unless, of course, you desperately need the money to do something else that you feel very strongly about. Kudus is a high monitor. I don't think any player is truly unsellable, even the people in keep. But Kudus, I think I would edge towards keeping for the next 2 game weeks, maybe sell him for that Arsenal away fixture. Kudus unfortunate to get a second assist for the second game in a row. Being on corners has been really useful for Kudus to get that, again, access to points. We just need to see him on the counter-attack maybe, and in a high-scoring game against Chelsea, if that's what we get, then Kudus could be one of the beneficiaries of a game like that, because it does look, out of Spurs' attacking players, he does look like the standout man at the moment, most likely to get attacking returns in each given game week. We've got Mo Salah here as well, always a monitor. If you can afford to keep him and you want to hold him for game week 12 onwards, then absolutely, that is going to definitely benefit some people, but also he's very expensive, not very good value for money, and you might need the money to do other moves. Grealish, you could think about selling him. You could think about selling him. This Sunderland away fixture, I don't think we can call this a good fixture anymore. The fixtures are pretty average, I think, for Everton now, with some tough fixtures coming up soon as well. So, therefore, I think Grealish is a player you could think about selling right now. I think one problem with Everton is, players like Grealish, players like Njai, and I would probably keep Njai, by the way, because, penalties, and he's doing slightly better as well. But one problem Everton are facing is they don't really have a clinical forward that, these midfielders can feed and pick up the assist points on. So actually the assists have dried up for Grealish a little bit, which is a little disappointing there. Phil Foden wants a monitor. Actually, his underlying data isn't too bad, really. 16 key passes, 10 shots, 0.88 XG, 1.31 XA. and he's actually doing weirdly well for DEFCON. Hasn't picked up points too often. I think he's only got defensive contribution points once, but actually his total DEFCON points, 47 in the last 6 game weeks. That's not horrendous. That's not too bad. And he will occasionally pick up DC points. Indeed. The fixtures aren't amazing though, so you can definitely understand why he's a low monitor and a player you could think about selling, but you don't have to sell him, I don't think. There are some reasons to keep Foden, but typically he is very close to going in that sell category. Gravenberch, poor attacking data. His defensive contributions, for me, are not good enough for what should be a defensive midfielder, really, and the potential injury issue. Tough couple of games. I think if you have Gravenberch, this might be a good excuse to sell him ahead of the next 2 fixtures, you know, with that injury he has, and maybe try and move to somewhere else. We've got these other Manchester City players as well, the cheaper guys maybe. Reinders not doing very well for a long time now, actually, to be fair. Taking plenty of shots, but from kind of low XG opportunities, not really creating too much, really. And actually playing a little bit deeper in last game week, which I don't think really worked for Man City. So Reinders, if, you know, I'm not sure where he's going to play. I don't know if he is going to continue to play, if Man City look to find different solutions for their defensive midfield situation. So there's definitely some warning flags around Reinders with the early substitutions, with the benchings in the midweek. I think it is time to start worrying a little bit more about him. And there's no real upside here. The fixtures aren't great. There's not really too much data supporting him. So I'm struggling to think of a reason really to keep Reinders at this point. And Doku, rotation risk, Man City midfielder, you know, they're always absolute disaster picks, aren't they? So might be a good idea to hop off. Looking at those defenders, Senesi, a definite keep. You just got to bench him for this Man City game. I mean, to be honest, you could maybe play him against Man City, but ideally you wouldn't. I think Senesi is one of those players, maybe kind of like Van der Ven last week, where, you know, nobody really expected too much from him, and then suddenly you get something crazy. Could it happen with Senesi next? Who knows? Who knows, I guess. But certainly he is a player that you are probably going to want to have for Game Week 11, 12, 13. We face his teams that don't create as much going forward as obviously Man City do. So an absolute keep for Senesi. He will get plenty of defensive contribution points, and you never know, maybe an attacking return has got to come eventually. Well, a goal at least. I know he's got an assist already. Alderete one to keep. I think concussion protocol is probably going to mean he is going to be available for Game Week 10. Could be a nice backup option, or even a player to play at home against Everton, considering he is so good for DEFCON and Sunderland are, you know, genuinely looking like a strong defense. There are going to be some more opportunities to play Alderete in the future as well. Game Week 12 against Fulham, for example, you might think about playing him in that one. Cucurella want to keep nailed on, and I think you've got to get through Game Week 11 and 12 with him, where you could get some decent results, not just in terms of clean sheets, because actually Chelsea are not super strong defensively right now, but actually looking for attacking returns. We know Cucurella is very much capable of those open play attacking returns, as well as maybe the odd, you know, for some reason, you know, he can be a little bit of a guy in the box getting on the end of knock-ons, flick-ons and stuff like that. But yeah, there's going to be some goal opportunities for him, and maybe you get some clean sheets from Chelsea, maybe not. They will have to improve in order to get the clean sheet points. Virgil is a really tricky one, because Liverpool have been disappointing defensively, but he's been great for DEFCON. He's been picking them up super regularly. Aston Villa at home is actually not a bad fixture for a defender right now. And then from Game Week 12, we just have these wonderful, wonderful fixtures for Liverpool. And I think Virgil is actually a player a lot of us are going to want to have from Game Week 12. So can you keep patient on Virgil? That is going to be kind of down to you. I think really you've got to keep Virgil unless he is blocking you from other moves. You know, if he's blocking you away from other defenders you really want to have in your team, or eating up too much budget, then those are the kind of reasons to sell Virgil. But generally speaking, I think I would try and hold on this one. Chalobah want to monitor. I think Chelsea fans are a little concerned around whether he is going to be starting games, and maybe he could be rotated very soon. So that is one to keep an eye on, and why he's in the monitor section. But if he can play the next 3 game weeks, could be pretty nice. We know that he is a pretty impressive player from those set pieces, getting on the ends of those crosses, corners, free kicks, and getting those headed goals. And Burnley in Game Week 12 could be a big opportunity for that. I think when we're looking really for aerial threats from set pieces, we're looking at Burnley and West Ham really at the moment. These are the two teams that concede a huge amount of chances from those set pieces. So, Senesi in Game Week 12, Chalobah in Game Week 12, playing those two teams, hey, never know, it could work out pretty well. We've got Anderson here. I think he is going to be out for Game Week 10. It's not looking super positive, even though, maybe some people were hoping to play him against Wolves at home. He could have been pretty nice there. But Game Week 11 and 12, I think they are going to be hopefully good games for him if he can gain his fitness back. We know his injury is not serious. We know it's not long term. It's just a case of counting down the days now before he returns. So I think he can still be useful. But obviously, if you desperately need a new defender right now, then Anderson is a player that you could potentially sell. Goodmanson, similar situation. I think some of his upcoming fixtures are actually okay for Leeds. But he's not your typical DEFCON defender like some of the other 4 million guys. And, it's pretty obvious that he is one of the weaker popular 4 million defenders that kind of people own right now. So might be a reason to move him to someone else, and that's why he's going to be in low monitor. Spurs defenders, I think, are just still sells, unfortunately. Even against Everton, they kept the clean sheet, but it didn't look very convincing. Plenty of times where they could have conceded. There was even a goal disallowed against Spurs in that game. I'll let you guys fight in the comments about whether that was a legit disallowing or not. But Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, these are three teams that are creating the most in the Premier League right now. They are scoring a lot of goals. Manchester United now back in form as well at the moment. So it's a really, really rubbish fixture. And a lot of the time, we are looking for our defenders to have good fixtures. That is our number one consideration. Maybe DEFCON is a consideration too. But really, Spurs defenders don't get defensive contributions anyway. Again, Game Week 9, real freak result for Spurs. If you look at that individual game in the context of all of their previous games, for the last month or so, Spurs have looked really weak defensively. They've not been keeping clean sheets. They're conceding silly goals. They're conceding a lot of chances. None of them are getting defensive contributions. So, yeah, I think these Spurs defenders are in general sells, including, maybe Van der Ven. You could consider, I know it's going to be difficult to sell him now, but you could consider just taking the points and running. But I feel more passionate about Pedro Porro and Romero as sells because Pedro Porro is so expensive and Romero, well, he's injured. And Frimpong, another injury from him. It's a really rough start to his Liverpool career, but he's going to be a pretty easy sell, I think. And by the way, guys, if you do enjoy Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid, make sure you drop a like. It really helps out the channel. And do subscribe if you are new around here as well. Plenty of videos on the FPL Mate channel every single game week. Right, let's check out some players to buy. We can whiz past Haaland pretty quickly. I think we all understand by this point that if you don't have him, you should probably buy him. But after that, things do get a little messier. And I know a lot of people are looking at forwards to buy this week. So let's go over some of these players. So I think the first option is going to be Mateta, up to 7.7 million now. But if we're looking at, genuinely good fixtures for a decent period of time, so coming into a nice period of fixtures for a player with very good underlying data, 6.56 XG, 23 shots. He's competing with Haaland, really, over the past 6 game weeks. For that underlying data, you could even argue that his underlying data is even better. What he doesn't have that Haaland does have is maybe that elite finishing factor. But if Mateta can take some more shooting lessons from Mbappe at the France camp, then I'm sure it won't be too long before he starts banging them in. But penalty taker, of course, as well, is very useful. Nailed on player with good fixtures. Look, there's a lot of things pointing towards Mateta as the answer to the forward problems right now. But he is not the only option. We have got Thiago here for 6.2 million. The fixtures are not so good for him, particularly if you're looking in the immediate term. Palace away, Newcastle at home. We don't expect too much from the Brentford attack in this game, but we know Thiago is going to be a penalty taker as well. His underlying data is not too bad. He's scored 4 goals in the last 6 game weeks, which is, just what you need. You need that player, you need that forward with the confidence coming into a run of fixtures with that confidence that he is scoring goals, which we can't say about players like Joao Pedro and Gyökeres, but Mateta has it, Thiago has it, and the next monitor, Voltemada, has it as well. Now, if you're looking for instant returns, West Ham away is a pretty nice fixture, really. Probably the best fixture that any of our forwards have for this game week. So if you are looking for someone new, My small concern with Voltemada is he is overperforming his numbers more than some of the other guys, so it raises questions about how sustainable it is. There are question marks around whether he's going to be taking penalties in the future. Is it going to be Gordon as the main penalty taker? And of course, one of his goals was a penalty, so we have to factor that in. The fixtures are I think decent, but generally they're not amazing. This is not an amazing run of fixtures for Newcastle. Maybe over the slightly over the short term at least. I think once we get past game week 14, 15, the fixtures actually do look really good for Newcastle. But by then, are we going to see someone like Wissa come into the Newcastle team and get some more minutes? There has already been some comments about Voltemada's workload here. So when Wissa is available, could we see some rotation there? It is something to consider if buying Voltemada. And that's why I've dropped him into the monitor section, because there are some small concerns there. Welbeck is another player with some small concerns. He's been in some fabulous form recently, scoring more goals than everyone above him in this list, other than Haaland, of course. And we've got some pretty nice fixtures for him as well. The problem with Welbeck is the same problem we always have with him. When he's in good form, he is a great pick in FPL, but at any given moment, he can suddenly be out of the team for weeks. We've seen that already happen once this season. He started off playing in the season, then suddenly he was out of the team. He scored a couple of goals from the bench, and now he's in the starting 11 again. You never know when that's going to switch up on you again. So there is definitely some risk attached to someone like Welbeck, but free kick taker, penalty taker, good form. Maybe not amazing underlying data compared to some of the other guys, but at 6.4 million with good fixtures, if you're willing to take the risk on longer term minutes, or at least medium term minutes, and he could be the solution there. He is a decent option. And the other monitors, I actually quite like as well, for different reasons. So you could restructure your team. There's not too many forwards that look really, really convincing right now. And therefore, is it a case of just going to a 2-forward formation, going for Mark Gue as your third forward, benching him every single game week or most game weeks? Mark Gue is probably good for the next maybe 1 or 2 weeks. But after that, Mark Gue sits last on your bench, and you freed up all of that money. He's 4.2 million, man. Like, it's super, super cheap. So it is going to free up so much budget for you to do other things with, particularly if you've already used your bench boost. You don't need to worry about really having a strong bench, as long as your other bench players are, decent. And with how well defenders, particularly cheap defenders, are doing right now, actually, the cheap defenders are going to be fine as bench cover. You don't need that attacking player on your bench as well as cover. Kruppi Jr., similar situation. I've dropped him below Mark Gue because, I think there is some worries about rotation risk. When Evan Nilsson is back, which could be game week 10, could be game week 11, you're probably not going to want to play them in game week 10 anyway, because it's away against Man City. We're going to see immediately Kruppi Jr. probably drops to the bench and probably stays there. Evan Nilsson is the main striker for Bournemouth. And whilst Kruppi Jr. is a fantastic prospect and could be really good going into the future, there is some major doubts around whether or not how much chance is there realistically of him getting regular starts? It's pretty low. And if it's even 50% chance each week whether he's going to start or not, even if it's a 50% doubt, are you going to have that confidence to start him in your FPL team? Probably not, because you don't want to get those 1-pointers. So that does damage him a little bit as an FPL option, from where we are right now. 4.6 million as well. That's 0.4 million more than Mark Gue at this point. So for that kind of reason, it maybe just makes more sense to just go for Mark Gue and bank the extra 0.4 million. You never know when that might be handy if you are looking to change that structure. But look, you never know with Kruppi Jr. We're saying right now he's not really a player that's likely to start very often. But going into the future, we know things can change very quickly in football. So he is one to keep an eye on for sure. I'm not yet convinced that he is that game-breaking FPL asset, though. I think he's definitely one to monitor, but we need to see his situation when Evan Nilsson is back, and only after that can we really truly assess him as an FPL option. Avoid Ekatike. If you don't have him already, you're not going to buy him right now ahead of the next 2 game weeks. Gyökeres, again, if you're going for a new Arsenal player, it's probably not going to be Gyökeres right now. You probably wouldn't put him in the top 3 Arsenal assets, I guess. And Isidore, a bit of a flash in the pan goal in last game week, but before that, plenty of blanks for him. The underlying data is not particularly amazing here. Taking plenty of shots, but very low amount of big chances. The XG number's not great. There's no key passes from him either. And Everton at home is not a bad fixture. After that, pretty poor, really. I would prefer to just spend that little bit of extra money going for a Thiago, going for a Welbeck, and if not, just go all the way down to a Gu or a Krupa Jr. I think Isidore is, yes, he scored in game week 9, and I know we're desperate to find solutions to the forward issue, aren't we? But yeah, I just cannot see this being the place to go, really, given the fixture difficulty. I can't really see when you would be looking to start him, to be honest. Let's look at some midfielders, and Burmo is going to be top of the list, and we have been keeping an eye on him in recent buy, sell, keep, avoid videos. He's been in the monitor section, hasn't he, and actually slowly rising up the list, but he's finally in the buy section. I think now we are seeing his underlying data, which has looked promising really all season, really being converted into actual form, which is what we need, isn't it, guys? We need a player not just with the good data, but is actually making good of their data. And Brian Mbeumo is finally doing it. On some of those corners, taking plenty of shots, 15 shots, 5 big chances is pretty decent for a midfielder with 1.9 XG. Manchester United looking better generally, and their fixtures are not too bad. I would say they are above average kind of fixture difficulty coming up for Brian Mbeumo. So if you have the 8.1 million to spend, why not? Why not? Looks like a decent midfielder to buy. Not sure I would sacrifice players like Bruno or Saka in order to get Mbeumo, but if you can go for a third, reasonably expensive kind of midfielder, I don't think I'd sell Semenyo as well for him, just to add that. Yeah, if you can think of someone, think of a way of getting Mbeumo in, maybe that means, dropping down one of your forwards to a 4.2 million guy, then maybe Mbeumo could be a really nice solution to that. Ismail Assar, I think, is a nice buy as well. If you can't get to Mateta, but you want that Crystal Palace attacking cover over these nice fixtures that are coming up for Crystal Palace, then Sarr is definitely a player to consider. Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, really nice in the next 3. We've got Manchester United there as well. Sarr has been a player who's been putting up pretty decent underlying numbers across the season. Only played 4 in the last 6 game weeks due to returning from injury. Last game against Arsenal, it's pretty difficult to include that in the data, really, as well. So really, he's played 3 games, really, and if you count that, then he's got a goal and an assist in 3 games. Not too bad. So yeah, for 6.5 million, I think if you're looking for a midfielder in that price range to buy in this game week, then there is no doubt in my mind that Sarr would be the player to buy. Saka is still definitely going to be an option for you as well. I think he's probably target number 1 for Arsenal attackers for this Burnley fixture, if we're looking for those mega hauls in Game Week 10 against a weak Burnley defence. Saka obviously didn't have a very good performance in Game Week 9 and got an early substitution. And the reason for that is he was actually ill. Yeah, he had illness throughout the week, didn't train for Arsenal. And Arteta, being Arteta, played him anyway in that game against Crystal Palace in Game Week 9. So that was the situation with Saka, but hopefully within a week he will have fully recovered from his illness. He will be back in training, of course, and should be in much better standing physically, mentally, everything else to do a good job against Burnley. A corner taker is always good when you play for Arsenal, taking plenty of shots, but I think outside of last game, he's just looked good. He's just looked good, and he's passing the eye test right now. Another cheap midfielder to consider is Minter. A little differential for you guys there. A player not really owned by too many people, but Brighton's fixtures look good, and Minter looks more nailed on than someone like Danny Welbeck as well at the moment. The underlying data seems to be reasonably there for a player of his price, so definitely a consideration if you're looking to lock in on a player with good fixtures, nailed on, good for minutes, decent underlying data, and most importantly, pretty cheap. Caicedo's still a player to consider, but yeah, I don't know if I'd rush to buy him necessarily. He's not quite as exciting as someone like Minter or Sarr, but he's proved to be pretty reliable with his defensive contributions so far this season and the odd wonder goal he seems to get. Declan Rice on set pieces for Arsenal is helpful, jamming his way to an assist last game week. That's just how the cookie crumbles. But is he better than double Arsenal defence? Or triple Arsenal defence? Probably not. Is he better than Saka? Probably not. So he's really more of a pick that, if you can't afford to get to Saka, you've already got your double Arsenal defence sorted. At that point, you look at maybe Rice as a consideration. And Szoboszlai, definitely a player to monitor. He is the new defensive contributions GOAT at the moment, I guess. Caicedo, 69 defensive contributions in 6 game weeks. Szoboszlai, 79. Absolutely crazy stuff. So, yeah, considering he's on a lot of set pieces as well, I think Szoboszlai genuinely could be a player we need to look at very closely in the near future. 6.5 million and maybe a little tough, particularly over the next 2 game weeks. but you could go early. Game week 12, however, I think I'm considering him. I think I'm considering him pretty strongly, actually. But anyway, avoid Eza. The underlying data is just not there at all at the moment. For him, 1.26 xg, 0.86 xa over this period of time where he's been playing a lot of minutes as well. I'm not totally convinced by him. I'm really not. But it's not as an individual, and it's so tough when speaking about Arsenal players because there are so many great picks at Arsenal, but we have to frame it within the other Arsenal players. And right now, Saka is better, Rice is better, Raya is better, Timber's better, Gabriel's better. So when you're, putting Eza in the pecking order of best Arsenal FPL assets, you can't count on those moments like we did every week in Game Week 9 when there are so many more reliable picks. So it is not an individual hate towards Eza. I mean, his shirt was hung up behind my videos for weeks, and it will go back behind me very soon, I'm sure, as I rotate the shirts I like to have behind me. But yeah, just for an FPL's perspective, there's too many better Arsenal players right now, and he could damage you by the fact that you miss out on other opportunities. Neto one to avoid. Just the Chelsea attack seems very spread on who's getting the returns, so it's difficult to really suggest anyone. Neto has been pretty inconsistent this season, even though his recent form has not been bad. Underlying data not particularly strong at the moment. Maybe you could have him in game week 11 or 12, but yeah, you're probably not going to buy him ahead of Spurs away, I don't think. Even though it could be a high-scoring game, I'm just struggling. 7 million for this underlying data is too much, isn't it? And I think Eze kind of has the same problem. Like, if you're spending 7.5 million, your expectations have to go up for the player, particularly when you can get something similar from Sarr or Minter or Rice or someone like that, right? And Bruno G, 6.5 million, maybe just a little too expensive for him as well. West Ham's a nice fixture for him, but I think after that, there's just better options right now. Oh man, this is turning out to be a long video. Apologies for that, guys. Gabriel and Timber, of course, always at the top of the defenders to buy. So really, it's the players beneath them that you guys are probably more looking at for new defender transfers, right? But if there's one player I would love to have for this upcoming run in the defense position that I don't think I'm going to be able to get easily with my structure, is actually Daniel Munoz. He looks really good, super attacking, which we know about him. The fixtures are brilliant, as we know. But what's interesting is actually defensive contributions. They're not amazing, but he is more than capable of picking them up. Not every game, but every couple of games, maybe every other game, maybe every third game, he's going to be picking up defensive contribution points, which is pretty decent for a player with this much attacking output. So yeah, really like Daniel Munoz. I do think he could be worth spending that 5.6 million on. So yeah, he's going to go in the buy section for me. After that, you're probably looking at some differentials. So we spoke earlier about West Ham being a fixture where the centre backs, those aerial threats, well, whoever they are in the team, are always going to have opportunities against West Ham, if you are a target man from set pieces. And a lot of people, their brain just defaults to Dan Burn. I understand why. Dan Burn is very tall, but Dan Burn actually hasn't taken a single shot in, I think, 5 Premier League games now. He's only taken 2 shots all season. Now, Chow has been playing for the last 5 games in the Premier League and also in other competitions. In the Premier League, he has taken the most shots of any Newcastle defender. He's found himself as that new target man for Newcastle. And I know some people are going to be skeptical on Chow because he is a new player to the Premier League. Maybe people unsure about him, aren't familiar with him particularly. And we'll just say, look, I feel safe with Burn. I know what I'm getting with Burn. And that's completely fair enough. But, in these videos, we're going to be honest. I've got to be honest of what I feel in terms of which kind of players we should be looking at. And yeah, for me, Chow is that player with better defensive contribution rate than Burn. He's got more bonus points potential. Chow, by the way, was on for a huge haul before Newcastle conceded yesterday because he was doing so well for bonus points. He's best for defensive contributions, best for bonus points, have more attacking threat than any other Newcastle defender. He is the guy, if you're looking for that holy grail 17-pointer in game week 10, he is the guy I would be picking. If you're looking for a 1 week, try and get that 17 points out, I would put to you that Chow is the most likely player to get goal, clean sheet, defensive contributions, 3 bonus points. He's got all of the capabilities to get all of those things and all of those categories. So if you're looking for the 17-pointer, I think Chow is the most likely player in the Premier League to get that in Game Week 10. It's a bold claim. I'm not saying it's going to happen. You do need a lot of luck on your side as well to get all of these things at once, but hey, even if you get 2 out of 4, it's not too bad, really, is it? We've got Keane here as a cheaper option, just a nailed-on Everton defender. Now that Branthwaite is going to be out for some time. Actually has a little bit more attacking threat than Tarkowski, and isn't too bad for defensive contributions either. There are some mixed fixtures for Everton, but he could work as a rotation option in your defence. Mukiele, similar situation, going to be a nice rotation option for you. Play him in some game weeks, bench him in the others at 4.1 million. That is very doable. Maybe Rodon, a similar situation, not as strong when it comes to defensive contributions for Rodon. Doesn't get them as frequently as some of the other defenders on this list, but he is still capable of getting them, once every 3rd game, maybe even once every 2 games. And that's maybe good enough a lot of the time. And Leeds actually surprisingly good defensive data recently too. Van de Ven is going to be an avoid. It's just, I'm not going to spend too much time trying to argue this one because it's too difficult. Because people look at points and they say, player score points, player good, me buy player. I get it. Sometimes the simple approach is the best approach, but it was such a freak result for Van de Ven. He hadn't got defensive contributions all season up until that point. He was terrible for defensive contributions last season. Last season, he didn't even score a goal all season. Everton haven't conceded a set piece all season. Spurs have failed to keep any clean sheets in all competitions in like a month or more, maybe 2 months. There was so much going against Van de Ven in Game Week 9, and he still pulled it off. Amazing. If you own him already, fantastic. If you don't own him, that has been and gone now. It has been and gone, and you're not going to get the same result against Chelsea, Man United, and Arsenal in the next 3. It is just too difficult. So if you have him, look, there's strong arguments to keep him now. It's very difficult to sell a player who has rewarded you so well. But if you don't have Van de Ven, you have no alliance with him. You have no obligation to keep him, and therefore to buy him because you don't have him. So yeah, why buy him? It just stinks of points chasing. It really does. So there you go. If you don't have Van de Ven, I would not be buying him. Hopefully that's not too controversial. Senesi, not one to buy against Man City, but yeah, if you don't have Senesi, you can definitely look at him from game week 11, 12 onwards, but probably not the perfect time to buy him. Same with Cash away against Liverpool. Nice result in game week 9, but a little bit of a Van de Ven situation for Matty Cash as well. I don't think we're expecting that to happen very often either, particularly in game week 10 in a tough away fixture. Goalkeepers quickly to finish us off. If you've lost hope on hope, lost hope on Pope? Yeah, that's right. Then don't. There's a West Ham game up next, and you're going to get some clean sheet opportunities once again. Newcastle, remember, are putting up some of the best defensive data in the Premier League, only really behind Arsenal at the moment. Man City, not too bad recently either as well. Sanchez, also you're probably going to keep him for 11 and 12 at least. And for Sells, Vicario, poor fixtures coming up really for the next 10 game weeks. There's 1 or 2 fixtures where you look at and you think maybe Spurs can keep a clean sheet in that game. So yeah, I think you could definitely consider selling Vicario if you want to make a goalkeeper move for whatever reason. But really, you're making a goalkeeper move if your goalkeeper is injured, like Alisson. If you're looking for a new goalkeeper, Raya and Pope are still my 2 favourites, and Ruffs and Donnarumma are still the 2 players, just like last week, that I don't think I'll be bringing in this week because the fixtures aren't really quite good enough right now for either team. I think if you're looking for Sunderland defensive cover, you're probably looking at Mukiele, Alderete if he's available, rather than spending the extra 0.5, to be honest. But there you go, guys. That is a lot of players. That is a lot of talking from me. I do apologise for the length of the video. But if you have any other players I somehow didn't talk about today, let me know in the comments section and we will give them a rating: buy, sell, keep, or avoid. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe. We did actually upload yesterday on Sunday where I spoke a little bit about my early transfer plans and early decisions to be made. So feel free to go and check that video out if you would like to. But I will be back to, not tomorrow, but the next day for more FPL content. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.